All right. So I got some questions about this video of the unaliving of a Ukrainian refugee. And I'm first of all, why is it always something weird with these stories? Why is it always something that just doesn't add up? Now let's start from the beginning. Why does this guy open the knife and then close it back up? Can somebody explain that to me? That was weird. He starts to open it and closes it. Huh? Why can't he just open the knife so I don't have no questions? Why can't he just open the knife so that my spider senses don't start tingling? Why can't this just be a regular unaliving where a guy pulls out a knife that's irrefutably a knife and gets to work? Why does he have to open and close it? And then after he opens, now watch, they're going to give you a close-up. Okay, he opens and closes it. Wait a minute. Now look at this. They even provide a close-up. Pulls it out. He opens. And then he decides, I don't want to do nothing today, and closes it back up. What? This is supposed to be a stabbing. Now, if you ask me, he tried to close it, but he didn't completely close it, and that's how he stabbed his own stupid hand. Can somebody explain to me why this fool stabbed his own hand? Why does weird stuff like this always happen? Look at him. He's leaking all over the place, and it's coming from his own hand. So, I keep hearing about this video of this unaliving, this poking that took place on the bus. And then I look at the video, and lo and behold, it's a bunch of weird stuff, where all the blood that I see on the train is coming from the dude. Does anybody have a different angle of this? I've been looking all over, and I've not been able to find it. And you can clearly see this fool stabbed his own hand. And that hand, that's the same hand he had that knife in. That's coming from him. This fool done stabbed his own hand. And you can see his hand. It looked like he stabbed his hand in the same area where it would be stabbed if he didn't fully close that knife that he had. You're going to have a partially open knife, and what you do, punch her in the neck? Why? And from what I hear, the girl didn't even have no stab wounds on her neck. What is going on? Why can't we just have a clean unaliving where nothing weird? And then, okay, not only that, we're going to look at some images. Because when you look at the images, you can't see no knife in his hand. Again, why? Why does stuff like this always happen? In these so-called super predator, the scary, criminalistic Negro, all these types of stories, it always involves something weird. It always involves multiple things that just don't add up. Now, like I just said, Somebody is going to have to explain to me why this man does not have a flipping knife in his hand. Where is the effing knife? You in poke mode. I expect to see a knife sticking out the bottom of your hand. But if this fool is sitting there with a partially closed knife in his hand and he goes off and punches her or whatever he did, yeah, you gonna stab your own stupid self in the hand, fool. Let's get closer. Let's get as close as we possibly. Where is the effing knife? Why does weird stuff like this always happen in these types of scenarios? See, this is why you quite often have people talking about this is some type of psyop. And I'm telling you, as I speak, white people are questioning it in this. White people are even asking questions. It's not just black people who scratching their head like, what is this? What is this? Somebody tell me. Is this some type of new way of poking people? Where you use a partially closed knife and somehow you extend it on your way to poking somebody? Come on, man. If anybody has a link, because I heard there are different angles. I heard there are some angles where you get a better view, but I also heard that in all of the angles, you can't see a knife and you can't see any stab wound. Why does there have to be an absence of a knife and an absence of a stab wound on her neck? You get stabbed in the neck, you're going to see blood dripping out. It ain't going to be dripping out. It's going to be pouring out. Pouring out. Also understand that immediately after this guy did this, his own hand started bleeding immediately. It started bleeding immediately. Wait a minute. Let's get a different video here. Oh yeah, we gotta examine this. Because I don't like stuff like this. There's been too many hoaxes for my taste. There's been too many scenarios where things have been staged for my comfort. Again, somebody's going to have to tell me why this fool and why did it cut off? Does anybody have a link to the video, the unedited video? Look. Why did it look like he just knocked her hat off her head? Huh? Look at his left hand. What, you knocked her hat off? You stabbed her in the neck, then you knocked her hat off her head? Now look at the floor. You clearly see, there's no blood on the floor until his hand, until his bloody hand waves across the floor. The blood is coming from this fool. Now it's funny how people are saying, oh, this, of course they're going to racialize it. Trump is going to racialize it. Anytime you have a white female victim and a black male perpetrator or victimizer, instantly this is going to be a race issue. They're going to make it about race. The idea is that he stabbed her because he's a black man. Which, if that's the case, why didn't these other black men stab her too? If blacks are just criminals, and then why wasn't she stabbed by multiple black men? Why didn't the black men at least have a pack mentality like what you see with dogs, where when one dog attacks, all the rest join in? Because that's an act of brainlessness, where you're just acting on impulse. Why didn't they at least do that? These black men on the train is looking like, what in the world just happened? And what is wrong with this dude? This one dude looked like he got so uncomfortable, he had to get up and change seats. It's like, what's wrong with this dude? So for all you racist degenerates to turn this into a race thing, let me ask you something. Why don't you turn that school shooting into a race issue? They call this guy a monster. Why don't you call that school shooter a monster? This was a case where one psychopath targeted one victim. That school shooting involved one psychopath targeting multiple victims, and those victims were youngsters. But he don't get the super predator title. He don't get racialized. In fact, he gets protected. You see, Trump, in response to this is Trump. This is Trump in response to this. Huh? Why didn't Trump hold up an image of that white boy, that transformer white boy, and alongside of a photo of that transformer white boy, why didn't he have images of the racist slurs he had written on his gun? Huh? Why didn't you do that, Trump? Same with all the rest of these media outlets. They always racialize stuff like this, but when race and racism is overt and there's a white perpetrator, they still downplay it. They still minimize it. This dude had racist slurs on his Roscoe. And there's no photos being held up by the president of his face next to that racist propaganda written on his Roscoe. Why not? Huh? Why wasn't the Buffalo shooter projected like this? Huh? Even that was minimized and downplayed. So again, where is the knife? Where's the knife? Who decides to poke someone and what? Retract the knife or extend the knife or open the knife on your way as your hand is on its way to the victim? Is that what he did? When he swung this knife, did he finally retract it when he was a couple inches from her neck? And if so, why is all the blood coming from his hand and not her neck? I spent about a half hour looking for the video where he's has a knife in his hand, looking for the video or an image where she has an actual stab wound in her. Why can't I find it? If any of you have found it, please share a link. I'm asking simple questions just right there in your face. This seems like another staged event. Why? Why does all these scenarios look so fake? Just like what was happening with the Asians. Y'all remember that? where the so-called black perpetrators would have like these color-coded, in one case it was the same perpetrator or the same actor, and they would have these color-coded hats, be dressed all, you could clearly see it was all staged. Back then, I'm like, what is this? What kind of nonsense, what kind of desperation is this, where they desperately want us black men to be out here randomly attacking people? Y'all want us to be doing that. This is what they really want. They're getting frustrated. They're getting mad. Oh, these niggers are not violent enough. Let's orchestrate something to make them look like, oh, violent predators. You just want to beat up Asians just because they're Asian. And apparently, allegedly, they said that after this happened, this man got up and started saying, I got that white girl. I got the white girl. I got the white. Again, that sounds like some BS, something staged, as if you're following a script. Black Americans don't talk like that. Now, this may be the result of him being a flipping lunatic. It is said that he is mentally ill. And if that's the case, I've also heard about how many times he's been arrested. He was recently in prison, from what I understand. Why are you continuously letting someone like this free? Huh? We've all been complaining about the so-called justice system for a long time. Why are you continuously letting a lunatic like this free? Is a good question. So I got questions. They said that eventually you could see her leaking, right? Or bleeding out. But I don't see anybody talking about this fool who clearly stabbed his own flipping hand and who clearly closed the knife. What kind of stabber does that? Like, can somebody tell me, how is that a good strategy for the stabber to open it and then close it? Like, nah. Like, nah. Yeah, I don't want to do it today. It's almost like, oh yeah, he changed his mind right at the last second. And then he stands up and there's flipping nothing in his hand. And then after it happens, she has nothing on her neck. No wound. Why isn't she even grabbing her neck? Somebody poked me in the neck. If I feel somebody touch me in the neck, I'm going to be grabbing all over my neck. I'm like, uh-oh, did he stab me? The first thing you do is try to feel to see if you've been stabbed, to see if there's a wound, to see if there's a puncture wound. That's the first thing you do without even thinking about it. You like, oh, was that a punch or a stab? Because many of you, some of you may have been stabbed. Sometimes when you get stabbed, it feels like you just been punched. You don't feel like you've been stabbed. You feel like you've been punched. So somebody punched me in the neck. The first thing I'm going to do is start grabbing all over my flipping neck. I'm not going to do what she did. Cover my mouth and while I got a hole in my neck, cover my mouth and start crying as if I just heard some bad news. You supposedly just got stabbed. And you sitting there crying with your hand over your mouth as if you just got a phone call that you lost a loved one. Like, what is this? So she has a hole in her neck right now? Really? Where? Where? Where's the hole? Where's the knife? and this fool immediately starts bleeding from his hand. If his hand took a stabbing, then it just doesn't make sense. That leads you to believe that his hand was stabbed rather than her neck. Look, his hand is in bad shape. It's in bad shape. He's in motion. He's not even standing there in one spot. Yet he wets up the pavement something fierce just walking by. You clearly see that. It looked like his hand took the brunt of the knife. So what happened, fool? You tried to fake a stabbing and hauled off and stabbed your own stupid hand? That's what it looked like. And it looked like he punched that woman or whatever and then knocked her hat off. Can somebody share a link or something so that this don't look so flippin' fake and weird? This looks weird. It looks fake. And it's pathetic. All right. Maybe he was high on drugs. That guy, looking at this guy, it wouldn't matter if he was high or sober. He seemed like something's just wrong with him. He seems mentally ill. The court cases, if I'm not mistaken, deemed him mentally unstable or something like that. He's just crazy. You can tell by how he looks. He looked like he's about to cry 1 minute, and he looked weird. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that dude. Somebody said, officer caught on body cam joking over the death of a grad student. Okay, you're talking about something else. So when you're high on drugs, you can't control your own movements that well. Huh? Well, I don't know what kind of drugs that is. I've been high on several drugs. I've never done something that I wouldn't do when I was sober, when I was high on drugs. That's just me personally. Even when I've been drunk. You know, when you're drunk, you might say some things and you might do some things that you wouldn't do when you were sober, but it's things that you wanted to do when you were sober. You just have, less personal control. You don't do things that you wouldn't naturally do when you were sober or wouldn't want to do when you were sober. The things you do when you're high or drunk are the things that you always want to do, even when you're sober, but you don't do it because you're sober and you're thinking about the repercussions. Yeah, I'm focusing on the absence of a flipping knife, the absence of a hole in the chick's neck, and this dude walking around with a clearly stabbed hand. What kind of nonsense is that? Exactly, especially if it was the carotid artery, that main artery in your neck. Man, please, you're going to have fluid squirting out your neck if you get stabbed in that main artery. So, yeah, please share a link if you have one, if you can substantiate this story. Allegedly, this lady has passed. This Ukrainian refugee has passed. I'm going to keep an eye on this story because it seems fake. I'll leave it there.